The sound of Harper's fingernails tapping against her phone screen at 3 in the morning was like water torture. Each tap echoed through our bedroom, a rhythmic reminder that my wife couldn't sleep because she was scrolling through old text messages. Again. "Can't sleep?" I asked, my voice thick with exhaustion and barely contained irritation. Harper didn't look up from the glowing screen. Just checking some work stuff. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Work stuff, right. Because wedding planners typically received heart eye emojis and miss you baby messages as part of their professional correspondence. I'd seen enough glimpses of her screen over the past few weeks to know she wasn't reviewing vendor contracts. "Must be some pretty engaging work stuff," I said, rolling over to face her. "You've been working until dawn for the past month." She finally looked at me, her perfectly manicured eyebrows raised in that condescending way that had become her default expression. "Don't be dramatic, Landon. I'm building a business here. Some of us can't just plant flowers and call it a career." The dig hit exactly where she intended. My landscape architecture firm had taken off faster than either of us expected, but Harper never missed an opportunity to diminish what I did. Apparently, designing outdoor spaces for million-dollar homes was just planting flowers in her mind. I sat up, suddenly wide awake. "You know what? You're right. I'm just a simple flower planter. So maybe you should go back to your ex who really understands your sophisticated needs." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Harper's face went pale, then flushed red. She clutched her phone tighter. "What are you talking about?" "Colin Dre. Remember him? Your college boyfriend who you've been texting at 3 in the morning for the past month? The one whose contact photo shows up every time your phone buzzes during dinner?" She opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it. We both knew I'd caught her red-handed. "It's not what you think," she said finally. "We're just friends. He's helping me with some business connections." "Business connections that require you to tell him how much you miss his touch?" Her face crumpled into fake tears, the same performance she'd used on her parents when they questioned our rushed engagement. "You're being paranoid. You're ruining everything with your jealousy." I laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. "I'm ruining everything? That's rich, Harper. Really rich." The next morning brought our weekly brunch with Harper's inner circle, a collection of ambitious 20-somethings who treated gossip like currency and drama like oxygen. Kelsey Morrison, Harper's best friend and business partner, held court at the head of the table, her voice carrying across the crowded restaurant. "So anyway," Kelsey was saying, gesturing with her mimosa, "Harper was telling me about their honeymoon disaster. Girl, you have to tell them what you told me." I looked up from my Eggs Benedict, fork halfway to my mouth. Harper's face had gone white. "Kelsey, maybe we should—" "No, this is hilarious," Kelsey interrupted, clearly enjoying herself. "So Harper calls me from Cabo, right? And she's like, the whole time we were in bed, I could only think about Colin. I kept wishing it was him instead of Landon. Can you imagine?" The table erupted in laughter, everyone except me and Harper. I set my fork down carefully, the metallic clink against the plate somehow louder than the laughter surrounding us. "That is hilarious," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "Absolutely hilarious." Harper reached for my hand across the table. "Landon, she's exaggerating. I never said—" I pulled my hand away and stood up, removing my wedding ring in one smooth motion. The simple gold band caught the morning sunlight streaming through the restaurant windows as I placed it on the table next to my untouched plate. "You're free to go back to him," I said, looking directly into Harper's horrified eyes. "Consider this your official permission." The laughter faded instantly. Every face at the table turned toward us, their expressions ranging from shock to poorly concealed excitement. Nothing like a public meltdown to spice up Sunday brunch. "Landon, please sit down," Harper whispered, her voice trembling. "You're making a scene." "I'm making a scene?" I asked, loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear. I'm not the one broadcasting my fantasies about my ex-boyfriend to a table full of people. But hey, at least now everyone knows why you kept checking your phone during our wedding ceremony. I pulled out my wallet and threw 320s on the table. Breakfast is on me. Consider it my contribution to Harper's comedy career. As I walked toward the exit, I heard Harper calling my name, her voice cracking with desperation. But I didn't turn around. I had work to do. The drive home gave me time to think, and thinking was dangerous territory. My mind raced through every moment of the past few months, every late-night phone session, every time Harper had seemed distracted during our conversations, every excuse she'd made for working late or meeting clients at odd hours. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the rage had crystallized into something much more useful, cold, calculating fury. I went straight to my home office and fired up my laptop. Harper thought she was tech-savvy, but she'd made one crucial mistake when we got married. She'd asked me to set up our shared cloud storage account. What she didn't know was that I'd configured it to automatically back up all of her text messages, photos, and call logs. The evidence was all there, laid out in digital black and white. Months of flirtatious messages with Colin Dre, photos she'd sent him from our honeymoon, hotel receipts from meetings that definitely weren't business-related, voice messages that made my stomach turn. But the crown jewel was a video message she'd sent him just last week. Harper, in our bedroom, wearing the lingerie I'd bought her for Valentine's Day, telling Colin how much she missed him and couldn't wait to see him again. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. Most men would have called a divorce lawyer. Some would have confronted the other man directly. A few might have thrown Harper's belongings onto the front lawn and changed the locks. But I wasn't most men. I was a landscape architect, which meant I specialized in long-term planning, careful preparation, and creating beautiful things from nothing. It also meant I understood the importance of proper foundation work. If you want to build something that lasts, you have to start by clearing away all the old, rotten material first. I opened a new document on my computer and began typing, Project Harper, Blueprint for Demolition. The beauty of methodical planning is that it gives rage a productive outlet. Instead of smashing things or making impulsive decisions, I channeled my fury into research, preparation, and strategic thinking. Harper had spent months carefully orchestrating her betrayal. It seemed only fair that I put the same level of effort into my response. Monday morning found me at my office earlier than usual, reviewing the evidence I'd collected over the weekend. My business partner and shop manager, Miles Garrett, arrived at 8 to find me hunched over my laptop with a coffee mug full of what was probably my 4th cup of the morning. Jesus, Landon, you look like hell, Miles said, hanging his jacket on the coat rack near the door. Rough weekend? Miles was the kind of guy who said exactly what he thought, when he thought it. 40 years old, built like a linebacker, and blessed with the social grace of a bulldozer. He was also the most loyal person I'd ever met, which made him the perfect confidant for what I was planning. You could say that, I replied, not looking up from the screen. How do you feel about helping me destroy someone's life? Miles poured himself a cup of coffee and settled into the chair across from my desk. Depends. Are we talking about Harper? I finally looked up, surprised. How did you know? Because you've been walking around like a man whose wife is cheating on him for the past month. Plus, I saw her having lunch with some slick-looking asshole at Romano's last Tuesday. They weren't discussing flower arrangements, if you know what I mean. Miles had always been perceptive, but his casual confirmation of what I'd discovered still hit like a punch to the gut. Why didn't you say anything? What was I supposed to say? Hey, buddy, I think your wife is screwing around? You would have figured it out eventually. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I turned my laptop around so he could see the screen. Miles whistled low as he scrolled through the messages and photos. Damn, Landon. She really went all out, didn't she? Who's the guy? Colin Dre, real estate agent. They dated in college. Colin Dre? Miles laughed, but there was no humor in it. That pretentious jackass with the BMW and the fake smile? I sold him a truckload of decorative stones last year. He tried to haggle me down to half price because he claimed he was influencing potential customers to use our services. Did you give him the discount? Hell no. I told him to take his influence and shove it. Guy's a walking advertisement for birth control. This was exactly why I needed Miles on my team. He had a gift for cutting through people's facades and seeing them for what they really were. Plus, he knew everyone in town and had zero tolerance for nonsense. So what's the plan? He asked, leaning back in his chair. Please tell me it involves public humiliation. I pulled up a detailed timeline I'd been working on. Phase 1 is information gathering. I want to know everything about Colin Dre. Where he lives, where he works, who he's dating, what his weaknesses are. Harper thinks she's been clever, but she's left a digital trail a mile wide. What about Harper herself? Harper's weakness is her image. Everything she does is calculated to make her look successful, sophisticated, and desirable. She's built her entire identity around being the perfect wife and businesswoman, so we're going to show everyone who she really is. Miles grinned, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. I like where this is going. What do you need me to do? Over the next hour, we outlined a comprehensive strategy. Miles would handle intelligence gathering. He knew half the contractors and service providers in town, which meant he had access to gossip, schedules, and inside information about both Harper and Colin. I would focus on evidence collection and strategic planning. One more thing, I said, as Miles prepared to leave for his first reconnaissance mission. This stays between us for now. No wives, no girlfriends, no drinking buddies. If this is going to work, we need complete operational security. You got it, boss. But can I ask you something? Shoot. Are you sure you want to go down this road? Once you start this kind of thing, there's no going back. You'll never be the same person you were before. I thought about Harper's face at brunch, the way she'd tried to minimize and deflect when caught red-handed. I thought about the months of lies, the fake smiles, the performance she'd been putting on while planning her exit strategy. The person I was before was a fool, I said. Maybe it's time for an upgrade. That afternoon, I drove across town to Colin's real estate office. Dre and Associates occupied a prime corner location in the upscale shopping district, all glass and chrome and artificial sophistication. Through the window, I could see Colin at his desk, talking animatedly into a headset while gesturing at his computer screen. He looked exactly like the kind of guy Harper would find irresistible, tall, conventionally handsome, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his teeth were unnaturally white, and his smile had the practiced sincerity of a politician or a used car salesman. I parked across the street and watched him for 20 minutes, taking notes on his habits and mannerisms. He checked his phone constantly, flirted shamelessly with his female colleagues, and spent at least 10 minutes admiring himself in the reflection of his computer monitor. This was the man my wife preferred to me. This shallow, vain, self-absorbed pretty boy who probably thought foreplay was talking about his commission rates. My phone buzzed with a text message from Harper. Can we please talk? I know you're upset, but we can work this out. I typed back, nothing to work out. You made your choice clear yesterday. Her response came immediately. I never chose anyone over you. Kelsey was exaggerating. You know how she gets? Really? So you didn't send Colin a video message last week wearing the lingerie I bought you? The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times before her final message arrived. How did you know about that? I didn't respond. Let her wonder how much I knew and how I'd found out. Uncertainty was a powerful weapon, and I intended to use every advantage I could get. That evening, I attended Colin's open house in the Riverside Heights subdivision. He was showing a 4-bedroom colonial with a price tag that would make most people faint, but the crowd of potential buyers seemed genuinely interested. I waited until Colin was busy with a young couple in the kitchen, then slipped upstairs to explore the bedrooms. The master suite had a walk-in closet that provided perfect cover for what I needed to do. From my jacket pocket, I pulled out a burner phone I'd purchased that morning, already loaded with screenshots of Harper's most incriminating messages to Colin. I also had a pair of Harper's underwear, red lace, expensive, with her initials embroidered on the waistband, that I'd taken from our bedroom. I planted both items in Colin's BMW, which was parked in the driveway with the windows slightly cracked. The phone went under the passenger seat, and the underwear went in the glove compartment, positioned so it would fall out the moment someone opened it. Then I found Colin's business card display and took a handful of cards. On the back of one, I wrote a note in Harper's handwriting, a skill I'd perfected from years of signing cards and documents for her. Can't wait for our next private showing. H. The note went on the windshield of a silver Mercedes that belonged to an elegant woman in her 50s who'd been asking detailed questions about the property's investment potential. Based on her expensive jewelry and the way Colin had been fawning over her, I guess she was either a serious buyer or someone with significant influence in the local real estate market. As I walked back toward the house, I heard Colin's voice from the front porch. He was saying goodbye to the Mercedes owner, whose name was apparently Victoria. Mrs. Kellerman, it's been such a pleasure showing you the property. I do hope you'll consider making an offer. I'll certainly think about it, Mr. Dre. You'll be hearing from me soon. Perfect. Mrs. Victoria Kellerman would find my little note when she got to her car, and she'd have some very interesting questions for Colin the next time they spoke. I drove home feeling satisfied with the day's work. The foundation was laid, the pieces were in motion, and Harper still had no idea what was coming. My phone buzzed with another message from her. Please come home. We need to talk. I typed back, I am home. You're the one who left. This time, she didn't respond. Tuesday brought the first signs that my plan was working. I was reviewing drainage specifications for a new project when Miles burst into the office with the expression of a man who just witnessed a spectacular car accident. You're not going to believe what happened to your boy Colin yesterday, he said, practically vibrating with excitement. I looked up from my blueprints. Do tell. So my buddy Rick does security systems for half the real estate offices in town, right? He was at Dre and Associates this morning installing some new cameras when Colin's boss, Mr. Dre Sr., came storming in with some fancy-looking lady. Turns out this lady found a note on her car at Colin's open house. Something about a private showing that definitely wasn't about real estate. I kept my expression neutral. Interesting. What happened? Colin tried to deny it, said he had no idea how the note got there, but then the lady mentioned she'd seen him acting unprofessionally with a brunette woman at the house. Apparently, someone told her they'd seen Colin and this woman in what looked like an intimate conversation near the back patio. That someone would have been Mrs. Partridge, my elderly neighbor, who'd been more than happy to share gossip about Harper's business meetings when I'd casually mentioned seeing Harper's car at various locations around town. Did Colin get fired? Not fired, but he's on thin ice. His boss gave him a lecture about maintaining professional boundaries and threatened to reassign his best listings if there are any more complaints. Miles settled into his chair, clearly enjoying himself. But that's not even the best part. After the boss left, Colin went out to his car and found something interesting in his glove compartment. Oh? Women's underwear. Expensive stuff, with initials embroidered on them. Rick said Colin went white as a sheet and started looking around like he thought someone was watching him. I allowed myself a small smile. Poor Colin. Someone's clearly trying to frame him. Yeah, poor Colin, Miles agreed, his voice dripping with sarcasm. By the way, Rick also mentioned that Colin's been getting some weird phone calls. Someone keeps calling his office and hanging up, but not before asking if he provides special services for married clients. That would be the work of Mrs. Partridge again. I'd given her Colin's business card and suggested she might want to inquire about his rates for discreet consultations. Mrs. Partridge had a gift for making innocent questions sound deeply suspicious. Sounds like Colin's having a rough week, I said, returning to my blueprints. Maybe he should consider a career change. That afternoon, I received a call from Harper. Her voice was strained, like she'd been crying or shouting, or both. Landon, we need to talk. Something terrible is happening. Define terrible. Someone's trying to sabotage my business. 3 clients have canceled this week, and they're all saying the same thing, that they heard I was unprofessional and unreliable. I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the panic in her voice. That's awful, Harper. Do you have any idea who might want to hurt your business? I think it might be Kelsey. She's been acting weird since Sunday brunch, and she has access to all my client information. Interesting. Harper's first instinct was to blame her best friend rather than consider that her own actions might have consequences. It was a revealing glimpse into her character, or lack thereof. Why would Kelsey want to sabotage you? I don't know. Maybe she's jealous of my success, or maybe she's upset about something I said. Women can be so petty about stupid things. The irony was breathtaking. Harper, who'd been cheating on her husband and broadcasting intimate details of their marriage to anyone who'd listen, was calling other women petty. Have you talked to her about it? I tried, but she's not answering my calls. Landon, I'm scared. If I lose any more clients, I might have to close the business. That would be unfortunate, I said, not bothering to hide my lack of sympathy. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to air our dirty laundry in public. That's not fair. Kelsey was the one who brought it up, not me. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen, Harper, and now you're dealing with the consequences. There was a long pause before she spoke again, her voice smaller and more vulnerable than I'd heard it in months. Are you ever coming home? I am home. I'm at the office working on actual business instead of texting my ex-boyfriend. That's not what I meant, and you know it. I know exactly what you meant, and the answer is no. I'm staying at the Riverside Inn until I figure out my next move. It wasn't true. I'd been sleeping in my office and showering at the gym, but I wanted her to think I was serious about the separation. The Riverside Inn was expensive, and Harper's practical mind would immediately start calculating the cost of my extended absence. How long are you planning to punish me for one stupid mistake? One mistake? I laughed, and the sound was harsh even to my own ears. Harper, you've been having an affair for months. You sent that man intimate videos and photos. You told your friends that you fantasized about him during our honeymoon. That's not one mistake. That's a pattern of betrayal. I never had closeness with him. Only because you haven't had the opportunity yet. But you were planning to, weren't you? That's what all those business meetings were leading up to. She started crying then, big dramatic sobs that might have moved me a few weeks earlier. Now they just sounded like manipulation. Please, Landon, I love you. I made some terrible choices, but I never stopped loving you. You have a funny way of showing love. I'll do anything to fix this. Anything you want. What I want is for you to experience the same humiliation you put me through. What I want is for you to understand what it feels like to have the person you trust most in the world betray you in the most public way possible. What does that mean? It means you should probably start looking for a new career, Harper, because your reputation in this town is about to become very interesting. I hung up before she could respond and immediately called Mrs. Partridge. Hello, dear, she answered on the first ring. How are you holding up? Mrs. Partridge had been my neighbor for 3 years, and she'd taken a maternal interest in my welfare ever since Harper's behavior had become obvious to anyone with functioning eyes. She was also the most connected gossip in a town that ran on gossip, which made her an invaluable ally. I'm doing better, Mrs. Partridge. Thank you for asking. I was wondering if you might do me another small favor. Of course, dear. What do you need? Do you know anyone involved with the Garden Club's annual charity auction? I'm the co-chair of the planning committee. Why? Perfect. I was thinking of making a donation to the auction, something that might generate some interesting conversation. What did you have in mind? How would you feel about auctioning off a collection of love letters and photographs? For charity, of course. Mrs. Partridge was quiet for a moment, and I could practically hear the gears turning in her mind. That sounds like it could be very educational for the community, she said finally. When would you like to make this donation? The auction is next Saturday, isn't it? I think Saturday would be perfect timing. I'll make sure there's a special announcement about your generous contribution, dear. The ladies of the Garden Club will be very interested to see what you've donated. After I hung up, I spent the rest of the afternoon preparing my donation to the charity auction. Harper's most incriminating messages, printed on high-quality paper and organized in a beautiful leather portfolio. The photos she'd sent to Colin, professionally printed and matted like art pieces. The voice messages, converted to QR codes that anyone with a smartphone could scan and play. I even included a handwritten note, supposedly from Harper to Colin, that I'd crafted using her own words from various text messages. My husband could never satisfy me the way you do. I can't wait to leave him and start our real life together. By Saturday, half the town would know exactly what kind of woman Harper Ellingvoss really was, and the other half would find out by Sunday. The foundation work was complete. Now it was time to start the demolition. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel possible. I dressed carefully for the Garden Club charity auction, khakis, button-down shirt, and the navy blazer Harper had bought me for our first anniversary. If I was going to destroy my wife's reputation, I wanted to look respectable while doing it. The auction was being held at the Riverside Community Center, a sprawling building that hosted everything from wedding receptions to town council meetings. By the time I arrived at 10:30, the parking lot was already full of expensive cars belonging to the town's most influential residents. Mrs. Partridge met me at the entrance, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Good morning, Landon. I've saved a special spot for your donation, right between the antique jewelry collection and the weekend getaway packages. Everyone will see it. Perfect. Did you have a chance to review the materials? She leaned closer and lowered her voice. Oh, my dear, I had no idea Harper was capable of such creativity. The ladies are going to be absolutely fascinated. The auction wouldn't begin until noon, but people were already browsing the display tables and socializing over coffee and pastries. I spotted several of Harper's clients among the crowd, along with most of the town's business elite and social influencers. Harper herself was notably absent, which wasn't surprising. She'd been avoiding public events since her client cancellations had started, probably hoping to let the gossip fade down before showing her face again. What she didn't know was that the gossip was just getting started. At exactly 12 o'clock, Mrs. Partridge took the microphone and began the auction with her usual theatrical flair. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our annual charity auction. Today we're raising money for the Children's Hospital, and we have some truly exceptional items to share with you. The first hour proceeded normally. Garden tools, restaurant gift certificates, handmade quilts, and other typical auction fare. I bid on a few items to maintain appearances, but my attention was focused on the crowd's energy and mood. Finally, Mrs. Partridge reached my donation. Our next item is very special, she announced, holding up the leather portfolio. This is a collection of personal correspondence and photographs donated by one of our community members who wishes to share these intimate glimpses into modern romance. She opened the portfolio and began reading from Harper's messages to Colin, her voice carrying clearly through the microphone system. I dream about your hands on my body every night. My husband touches me, but I pretend it's you. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Mrs. Partridge continued, seemingly oblivious to the shock she was causing. Last night I wore the red dress you like while we had dinner. He complimented me on how beautiful I looked, but all I could think about was how you would take it off me. People were starting to murmur and look around, trying to figure out who had written such explicit messages. Mrs. Partridge held up one of the photographs. Harper in lingerie, posing seductively for the camera. The collection also includes these artistic photographs showing the passionate side of a woman in love. That's when I saw Kelsey Morrison in the crowd. Her face had gone white, and she was staring at the photograph with obvious recognition. She grabbed her husband's arm and whispered something urgent in his ear. Mrs. Partridge continued reading, and with each message, the crowd grew more agitated. These weren't just anonymous love letters. They were detailed, explicit confessions of an ongoing affair, complete with references to specific locations and events that many people in the audience would recognize. Meeting you at the Riverside Inn yesterday was incredible. Room 237 will always be special to me now. Several people in the crowd exchanged knowing looks. The Riverside Inn was where out-of-town visitors stayed, but it was also where locals went when they wanted privacy for activities they couldn't conduct at home. I can't wait to leave my husband and start our real life together. He's so boring and predictable. You make me feel alive again. That's when someone in the crowd shouted, "Whose letters are those?" Mrs. Partridge looked around innocently. The donor requested anonymity, but I believe the author's initials are included in some of the correspondence. She held up another message, this one showing Harper's full signature at the bottom. The crowd erupted in excited chatter as people recognized the name. "Harper Elling-Voss?" someone called out. "The wedding planner?" "Isn't she married to that nice landscaper fellow?" asked another voice. "I heard she's been having problems with her business lately," added a third person. Within minutes, the entire crowd was buzzing with gossip and speculation. Cell phones appeared as people started taking photos of the display and texting their friends who weren't at the auction. Mrs. Partridge, playing her role perfectly, tried to restore order. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remember, this is a charity auction. Do I hear any bids for this fascinating collection?" Nobody bid. The crowd was too busy gossiping and taking pictures to focus on the actual auction. Mrs. Partridge eventually moved on to the next item, but the damage was done. I stayed for another hour, listening to conversations and watching the story spread through the room like wildfire. By the time I left, at least 50 people had seen Harper's most private confessions, and many of them were already sharing the details with friends and family who hadn't been there. My phone started buzzing with text messages around 2 o'clock. The first was from Harper. "What did you do?" I didn't respond immediately. Let her wonder how much I knew about the auction and what role I'd played in her public humiliation. The second message was from Miles. "Holy shit, boss. My wife just called me from the auction. She said half the town is talking about Harper's letters. Please tell me you were responsible for this masterpiece." I texted back, "I have no idea what you're talking about. I've been working all day." The third message was from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Colin Dre. We need to talk, now." That one was interesting. Colin had finally figured out that someone was targeting him and Harper, and he wanted to negotiate. Unfortunately for him, I wasn't in a negotiating mood. I drove to my office and spent the afternoon monitoring social media and local news outlets. The story was spreading faster than I'd anticipated. Someone had posted photos of Harper's messages on Facebook, and they were being shared and commented on by dozens of people. The local gossip blog, Riverside Confidential, had already published a story titled "Local Wedding Planner's Steamy Affair Exposed at Charity Auction." The post included several of Harper's most damaging quotes and speculation about the identity of her lover. By 5 o'clock, Harper had called me 17 times. I finally answered on the 18th call. "You bastard," she said without preamble. "You destroyed me." "I didn't destroy anything, Harper. I just shared your own words with people who might find them interesting. Those were private messages. You had no right to." "I had no right?" I interrupted. "You had no right to humiliate me at Sunday brunch. You had no right to cheat on me with your ex-boyfriend. You had no right to send him videos of yourself wearing lingerie I bought you." "How did you even get those messages?" "Hey, you really should read the terms and conditions when you sign up for cloud storage services. Very educational." She was crying now, but they sounded like tears of rage rather than sadness. "My business is ruined. My clients are canceling. My reputation is destroyed." "Good. Now you know how it feels." "This isn't over, Landon. I'll make you pay for this." "Really? How exactly are you going to make me pay? By telling people I exposed your affair? By admitting you were planning to leave me for another man? Please, Harper, tell everyone exactly what I did wrong." She hung up without responding. An hour later, Colin Dre showed up at my office. He looked like he'd been through a blender. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and his face was flushed with anger and embarrassment. "We need to talk," he said, barging through the door without waiting for an invitation. I looked up from my computer. "Colin, what a pleasant surprise. How was the auction?" "You know damn well I wasn't at the auction, but half my clients were, and they're asking some very uncomfortable questions about my relationship with Harper Voss." "That's unfortunate. Maybe you should have thought about that before you started sleeping with a married woman." "I never slept with her." But you wanted to. You were planning to. You've been working toward it for months. He sat down across from my desk, trying to regain his composure. Look, I know you're upset about Harper, but this has gone too far. You're destroying innocent people. I laughed. Innocent people? Colin, you've been trying to steal another man's wife. Harper's been cheating on her husband. Where exactly are these innocent people you're worried about? Harper made a mistake, but she doesn't deserve to have her private life exposed like this. Actually, she does, and so do you. You both made choices, and now you're dealing with the consequences. Colin leaned forward, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was a threatening tone. I want you to stop. Whatever you're planning next, don't do it. I'll make it worth your while. Are you trying to bribe me? I'm trying to find a reasonable solution to this situation. I stood up and walked around my desk until I was standing directly in front of him. Colin was taller than me, but something in my expression made him shrink back in his chair. Here's your reasonable solution, Colin. Stay away from my wife. Stay away from me. Stay away from my business and my friends and my life. If I see you anywhere near Harper again, I'll make today's auction look like a friendly conversation. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm educating you. Today was just the opening act, Colin. If you think having your clients ask uncomfortable questions is bad, wait until you see what I have planned for the main event. He stood up quickly, knocking over his chair in the process. You're insane. No, I'm thorough. There's a difference. After he left, I sat back down at my computer and opened a new document. Phase 2 of my plan was about to begin, and it was going to be much more personal than a simple charity auction. Harper and Colin thought they'd seen the worst of what I could do. They were wrong. The week following the auction was a masterclass in social destruction. Harper's phone calls became increasingly desperate as her remaining clients abandoned her, and her friends began avoiding her calls. Colin, meanwhile, was dealing with his own crisis as rumors about his special services spread through the real estate community. But I wasn't finished with either of them. Wednesday evening found me parked outside the Riverside Inn, watching Colin's BMW in the parking lot. According to Miles, who'd been monitoring their communications through a contact at the hotel, Harper and Colin were meeting to discuss damage control. How romantic. I waited until they'd been inside for an hour before making my move. Colin's car was parked in a dimly lit section of the lot, away from the main entrance and security cameras. Perfect for what I had planned. From my truck, I unloaded 50 pink flamingo lawn ornaments that I'd purchased from a garden supply warehouse going out of business. Each flamingo had a small sign attached to its neck with fishing line. The signs read things like cheater, liar, homewrecker, and adulterer. It took me 20 minutes to arrange the flamingos around Colin's car in a perfect heart shape, with the BMW in the center. The effect was both ridiculous and unmistakably clear. Anyone who saw it would know exactly what message I was sending. But the flamingos were just the opening act. I'd also brought a bag of organic fertilizer, the kind that smells like concentrated doom when it gets wet. I spread it liberally under Colin's car and around the flamingo display, then activated the hotel's sprinkler system using a technique Miles had learned from his security system contacts. By the time Colin and Harper emerged from the hotel, his precious BMW was surrounded by wet, stinking fertilizer and 50 pink flamingos calling him a cheater. The smell was so bad that other hotel guests were complaining and demanding to know what had faded in the parking lot. I watched from across the street as Colin discovered his vehicular shrine. His face went through several interesting color changes before settling on a shade of red that matched the flamingo signs. Harper stood beside him, her mouth hanging open in shock. They spent 45 minutes removing the flamingos and loading them into Colin's trunk, all while other hotel guests took pictures and posted them on social media. By morning, Daracker flamingo shaming was trending on local Twitter, and someone had created a Facebook page called Colin Dre's Pink Parade of Shame. Thursday brought even better news. Mrs. Partridge called to inform me that Harper had been asked to resign from the Chamber of Commerce after several members complained about her moral character affecting the organization's reputation. The poor dear is apparently staying with her sister in Portland, Mrs. Partridge reported with obvious satisfaction. Word is she can't show her face in town without people staring and whispering. That's unfortunate, I said, not bothering to hide my satisfaction. I hope she finds the peace and quiet she needs to reflect on her choices. Oh, I'm sure she will, dear. By the way, Colin Dre's real estate license is under review by the state board. Apparently someone filed a complaint about his unprofessional conduct with married clients. That someone would have been me, using Harper's own messages as evidence of Colin's inappropriate behavior. The state licensing board took ethics violations very seriously, especially when they involved detailed documentation of unprofessional relationships. It sounds like Colin might need to consider a career change, I observed. Indeed. perhaps something in a field that doesn't require public trust. Waste management, perhaps, or political consulting. Friday afternoon brought the confrontation I'd been expecting. Harper showed up at my office without warning, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually perfect appearance was disheveled, her makeup was smeared, and her clothes looked like she'd been wearing them for a week. "Are you satisfied now?" she demanded, bursting through my office door. "You've destroyed everything I worked for." I looked up from my blueprints. "Hello, Harper. You look terrible. Rough week?" "Don't you dare act innocent. I know you're behind all of this. The auction, the flamingos, the complaints to Colin's licensing board. You've systematically destroyed both of our lives." "I've systematically exposed the truth about both of your characters. There's a difference." She sat down across from my desk, and for a moment, she looked almost vulnerable. "Why are you doing this to me? I know I hurt you, but this is cruel." "Cruel?" I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. "Harper, you spent months planning to leave me for another man. You humiliated me in front of our friends. You made me feel like a fool for trusting you, and you're calling me cruel for letting people know who you really are? Those messages were private. Those messages were evidence of your betrayal, and now everyone knows exactly what kind of person they've been trusting with their most important celebrations." She started crying then, but they were different tears than before. Tears of genuine despair rather than manipulative performance. "I've lost everything, Landon. My business, my friends, my reputation. Even my family is ashamed of me." "Good. Maybe now you'll understand what consequences feel like." "What do you want from me? An apology?" "I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I made stupid choices. I'm sorry I ruined our marriage. Is that enough?" I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the town where Harper would never again be able to show her face without shame. "It's not about apologies, Harper. It's about justice. You thought you could betray me without consequences because you assumed I was too weak or too stupid to fight back. You were wrong. So what happens now? Do you keep destroying my life until there's nothing left?" I turned to face her. "What happens now is that you learn to live with the consequences of your choices. You wanted excitement and passion and drama. Congratulations. You got all three. I never wanted this. You wanted to leave me for Colin. You wanted to start a new life with him. Well, here's your chance. You're both free now. Free from your reputations, free from your careers, free from the respect of your community. Enjoy your freedom." She stood up slowly, like an old woman with arthritis. "I hope you're proud of yourself." "I am. For the first time in months, I'm proud of who I am and what I've accomplished." "You're not the man I married." "You're right. The man you married was a fool who trusted his wife and believed in the sanctity of marriage. That man is gone. You eliminated him when you decided to cheat on him and humiliate him in public." Harper walked to the door, then turned back one last time. "This isn't over, Landon." "Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." After she left, I sat at my desk and opened a bottle of expensive whiskey I'd been saving for a special occasion. This seemed special enough. Miles found me there an hour later, staring out the window and sipping whiskey. "How are you feeling, boss?" "Like a man who just finished a very difficult construction project." "Any regrets?" I thought about it for a long moment. "None. Harper made her choices, and I made mine. The difference is that my choices were based on truth and justice, while hers were based on selfishness and betrayal." "What's next?" "Next, I rebuild. New projects, new clients, new life. The foundation is solid now. No more rotten material to worry about." Miles poured himself a glass of whiskey and raised it in a toast. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I agreed, clinking my glass against his. Outside, the sun was setting over a town where Harper Ellingvoss would never again be able to hold her head high, and Colin Dre would never again be trusted with other people's most important transactions. Some people might call what I'd done revenge. I preferred to think of it as urban renewal, clearing away the old, corrupt structures to make room for something better. The demolition was complete. Now it was time to build something new. Saturday morning brought news that exceeded even my most optimistic expectations. Miles arrived at the office with coffee and a newspaper, grinning like a man who just won the lottery. "You're going to love this," he said, spreading the local paper across my desk. The headline read, "Local real estate agent loses license following ethics investigation." Below it was a photo of Colin looking haggard and defeated as he left the state licensing board hearing. "They pulled his license permanently," Miles explained. "Apparently the evidence of unprofessional conduct was so overwhelming that they didn't even need a full hearing. He's banned from practicing real estate in Maine." I read through the article, savoring every detail. Colin had tried to defend himself by claiming the messages were fake, but the digital forensics expert I'd anonymously hired to authenticate them had provided irrefutable proof of their legitimacy. What about Harper? Even better news on that front. My wife heard from her sister, who heard from her hairdresser, who heard from Harper's former business partner that Harper's filed for bankruptcy. Apparently, the client cancellations and legal fees from trying to fight the licensing board complaint wiped out her savings. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with justice. Harper and Colin had made deliberate choices to betray trust and hurt innocent people. Now they were experiencing the natural consequences of those choices. There's more, Miles continued, clearly enjoying himself. Colin's fiancée, remember her? The one who dumped wine on his head at the garden party? She's apparently been telling everyone who'll listen about the evidence she found in his car. Photos, text messages, the works. Poor Colin. His reputation seems to be suffering. Suffering? Boss, his reputation is over. No one in this town will trust him to sell them a newspaper, let alone a house. The phone rang, interrupting our celebration. I answered to find Mrs. Partridge on the line, practically vibrating with excitement. Landon, dear, you'll never guess what just happened. Harper's sister called me. Apparently Harper asked her to reach out to you. About what? She wants to make a deal. She's willing to sign divorce papers and give up any claim to your business or assets if you'll stop what she calls your campaign of harassment. I laughed. Harassment? I haven't harassed anyone. I've simply shared truthful information with people who had a right to know it. That's exactly what I told her sister. I also mentioned that you're a respected member of this community who's been the victim of a terrible betrayal, and that any reasonable person would understand your desire to clear your name. What did she say to that? She said Harper is desperate and doesn't know what else to do. Apparently, she can't find work anywhere in the state because word of her indiscretions has spread throughout the wedding planning industry. That's unfortunate. Perhaps she should consider a career change. I suggested waste management or political consulting, just like I did for Colin. After Mrs. Partridge hung up, I spent the morning reviewing the divorce papers Harper's lawyer had sent over. They were surprisingly generous. She was asking for nothing except a quick, quiet dissolution of our marriage. No alimony, no property claims, no demands for half my business. It was exactly what I'd wanted, but getting it felt almost anticlimactic after everything that had happened. Miles looked up from his own paperwork. You going to sign them? I think so. There's no point in staying married to someone who betrayed me so thoroughly. What about the house? She can keep it. I never liked that place anyway. Too much emphasis on appearance and not enough on substance. Kind of like Harper herself. That afternoon, I drove to the lakeside park where Harper and I had gotten engaged 2 years earlier. It seemed like the appropriate place to make my final decision about our marriage. The park was nearly empty except for a few joggers and an elderly man feeding ducks. I found the bench where I'd proposed to Harper, sat down, and pulled out my phone. There were 3 missed calls from Harper and a text message. Please call me. We need to talk before you sign anything. I almost deleted the message without responding, but curiosity got the better of me. I called her back. Landon? She answered on the first ring, her voice thick with tears. Thank you for calling me back. What do you want, Harper? I want to apologize. Really apologize, not just say the words because I think you want to hear them. I'm listening. I know what I did was unforgivable. I betrayed you, I humiliated you, and I destroyed our marriage because I was selfish and stupid and thought I deserved something more exciting than what we had. She paused, and I could hear her crying softly. But what you've done to me? Landon, I can't even leave my apartment without people staring at me. I can't work in my chosen profession anymore. I can't maintain relationships with friends or family because everyone knows what I did. Yes, that's how consequences work. I understand that you wanted me to pay for what I did, and I have. I've lost everything that mattered to me. Isn't that enough? I thought about her question seriously. Was it enough? Had justice been served, or was I just indulging in cruelty for its own sake? Harper, do you remember what you said at Sunday brunch? About thinking of Colin while we were intimate? Yes. I'm sorry about that. I never should have. Do you remember how everyone laughed? How they thought it was hilarious that you were fantasizing about another man during our honeymoon? Yes. That's when I realized that you didn't just betray me privately. You made me a public joke. You turned our marriage into entertainment for your friends. I know. I was wrong. So yes, Harper, what I've done to you is enough. It's exactly proportional to what you did to me. You made me a laughingstock, so I returned the favor. You destroyed my trust and my dignity, so I destroyed your reputation and your career. So we're even now? We're even now. I could hear the relief in her voice. Does that mean you'll sign the divorce papers? I'll sign them on one condition. What? I want you to understand something. What happened to you wasn't random bad luck or unfair persecution. It was the direct result of choices you made. You chose to cheat on me, you chose to humiliate me in public, you chose to plan a future with another man while still married to me. I understand. Do you? Because I want to make sure you never make these mistakes again with someone else. The next man who trusts you deserves better than what you gave me. I understand, Landon. I really do. Good. Then we have nothing left to discuss. I hung up and immediately called Harper's lawyer to arrange a signing appointment. By the end of the week, Harper Elling Voss would be Harper Elling again, and I would be free to build a new life without the constant weight of betrayal and deception. That evening, I met Miles at our favorite bar to celebrate the end of what he'd started calling Operation Flamingo. So what's next, boss? You thinking about dating again? Eventually. But first, I want to focus on the business. We've got more work than we can handle, and I want to build something that will last. Something with a solid foundation? Something with a solid foundation, I agreed, raising my beer in a toast. To solid foundations and honest people. To solid foundations and honest people. As we drank, I reflected on everything that had happened over the past few weeks. Some people might say I'd gone too far, that my response to Harper's betrayal had been disproportionate or cruel. But those people would be wrong. Harper had made calculated decisions to betray our marriage and humiliate me publicly. She'd planned to leave me for another man while still enjoying the benefits of being my wife. She'd turned our most intimate moments into gossip for her friends' entertainment. All I'd done was make sure that everyone knew exactly who she really was. That wasn't revenge. It was justice. And justice, unlike revenge, doesn't require apologies or second thoughts. Miles finished his beer and stood up to leave. You heading home? In a minute. I want to finish this beer and enjoy the peace and quiet. Peace and quiet? For the first time in months, I don't have to worry about what Harper's doing behind my back, or whether she's lying to me, or whether the people around me know something I don't know. It's remarkably peaceful. After Miles left, I sat alone at the bar, watching the local news on the television mounted above the bartender's station. The lead story was about a new development project that would bring jobs and investment to our struggling downtown area. The developer being interviewed was someone I'd never met, but I recognized the type. Young, ambitious, full of ideas about improving the community, the kind of person who believed in building things that would last. I finished my beer and walked outside into the cool evening air. Tomorrow would bring new projects, new challenges, and new opportunities to build something meaningful. Harper and Colin were yesterday's problems, already fading into the background noise of small-town gossip and scandal. They'd made their choices and faced their consequences, and now they were someone else's concern. I had more important things to focus on, like designing gardens that would still be beautiful in 50 years, and building a business that would outlast whatever temporary dramas people created for themselves. As I drove home to my new apartment, I passed the house where Harper and I had lived together. The windows were dark, and there was a "for sale" sign in the front yard. I didn't slow down or feel any nostalgia for what we'd had together. That life was over, demolished as thoroughly as any condemned building. Now it was time to build something new, something honest, something that would last.